Indeed, across the continent that are watching on Channel 404 and DSTV, a very warm welcome to you. And whilst we're focusing, I guess, on a South African story, I think lessons can be learned across the continent. So we'd love to hear from you as well. But today in Sharp Focus, we're talking about a sector which perhaps hasn't always been foremost in conversation. When we talk about developing business and developing the economy, SMMEs, small, medium enterprises, have taken, I guess, a lion's share of the media story. But there is a sector, and that's the industrial sector, that's been talked about. The President has often talked about developing black industrialists. Well, the Department of Trade and Industry has developed a program and a policy and a scheme to develop black industrialists, and we're going to discuss that now. So how can we develop more black industrialists in this country so that we can, I guess, in some ways, fast-track the economy, create those badly needed jobs at a certain scale? And to help us unpack this, we've got three panelists who are going to be joining us in the conversation, leading the conversation that we'll have with you at home and also with our audience here in Pretoria for a change. We're literally just across the road from the Union buildings, and this is where the conversation is taking place. So I'd just like to say a very good morning and welcome to the Honourable Minister of Trade and Industry, Dr Rob Davies. Thank you for joining us and welcome.
Good morning, Peter, and good morning to the viewers and the audience here in Pretoria.
And next to you, we have the CEO of the National Empowerment Fund, and your job is a big one to try and make sure that these industrialists can get the capital that they need and support. The CEO, Ms. Philisiwe Mthethwa, thank you very much for joining us and welcome.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thanks for inviting us.
It's a pleasure. And next to you, the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, the Honourable Mr. Mzwandile Masina. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, well, let's start kind of just setting the stage a little bit so that we can get everybody at home up to speed and then also start to get the conversation going. So, Minister, let's paint in broad terms the idea, the notion of black industrialists. You've had to put down a program, policies, support structures. Take us through that journey and why it's important for us to be having this conversation.
Well, I think the starting point is that we have, as government, been talking for some time about the need for radical economic transformation. And I think that's got two interlinked dimensions. If we're going to achieve the targets of higher levels of inclusive economic growth in this country, higher levels of growth but also greater inclusion, we've got to do two things. One is we've got to change the productive base of this economy radically. We've got to move from being just a producer and exporter of primary commodities. That has become more urgent with the current state of prices in the mineral economy. We've got to add value, we've got to industrialize. That's the common objective, not just of South Africa, but of the African continent. But at the same time, we've got to create greater inclusivity. And the manufacturing sector in particular, if it's going to be a leading force for radical change in the productive basis, has also got itself to become more inclusive. Now, while we are introducing BEE into the sector, and we are insisting on BEE reciprocity for people, whether they be multinationals or domestic companies that receive our incentive schemes. And these will now cover things like skills development, supplier development, and that kind of thing. While that is happening, I think we've also seen a need for a dedicated program to generate more black industrialists who can lead a process of transformation in the sense of promoting greater inclusion in the sector. Now, the Deputy Minister did a lot of the legwork, mobilizing the sector, organizing a number of the consultations, but the final document was approved by Cabinet last year, and that will basically bring together a number of agencies that are involved in funding. There will be a forum established, and that forum is intended to have its first meeting in March already. Applications are open. We have received pledges from a number of agencies. They include the Development Bank of Southern Africa, the IDC, the Land Bank, of course, the National Empowerment Fund. They include some of the provincial funding agencies. They will all meet together in a forum, receive applications, and we're looking to identify industrialists that are quite tightly defined. That means people who are involved in the industrial sector and are actually contributing risk and are personally involved in manufacturing ventures. I know that there are black industrialists, people who are quite capable of running industrial companies, in railway equipment, in chemical industries, in the clothing and textile sector, in agro-processing, in a host of industries across our country, but we're not at the scale that's required, either in terms of the number of enterprises, because we can have small enterprises as well as large enterprises, and in particular, we don't have leading companies that are owned by black people in the manufacturing space. So that's the quest that we're on, that's the journey that we're on, and the program is intended to provide support for that.
All right. Ms. Mthethwa, I'm going to come to you just after the next question, because and you're the enabler, I guess, in many respects. I just want to get a bit more clarity on the policy itself, and then we'll talk about how you've been able to contribute to that. So, Mr. Masina, we've been told that you've done most of the legwork here. In a nutshell, what does this document say? What does this policy say? What does this scheme dictate?
Well, this is a well-defined, well-targeted program that begins, as the Minister was saying, to encourage more participation of blacks into the productive side of the economy. I think that's the intention. We are basically trying to ensure that we can ramp up a number of activities in the manufacturing sector and support those that are already doing work in the sector, but there are also those that are new entrants who are graduating from being SMMEs into the sector. So I think those are the main things that we're looking at. We've really looked into the manifesto of the ruling party in terms of how we wanted to move forward with the program of radical socio-economic transformation, which has become necessary. And I think that without making this one piece of policies to be a panacea of all the problems, we are moving towards a particular direction through this intervention. And I think that many South Africans will appreciate that we are beginning to be clearer in terms of our policy articulation. You saw our government in the main separating issues of SMMEs because we had accepted that they're an engine of growth, they're important, they needed special attention. And at this point, as part of our industrial policy action plan, we have now begun to look into a specific program that is going to respond in the main. So I think those are the issues.
Okay. All right. So, Ms. Mthethwa, I guess now